All right, we are live. It is the lockdown lift up. And although I know we're not technically on a full on stay at home order anymore, we're going to keep going until we have our full freedom back. That's my plan. Now, before I dive into today's topic, which I'm super excited about, and I hope you are too, it's all about how do we interrupt the patterns that keep us stuck. What I want to do before we go into that is I want to be sure I am actually streaming live to you out in the world and not to my hard drive again, because that happened yesterday. So I am going to. I see me. I'm live, and I don't know why I've got so much shadow on my face. You know what? I think it's because of the blinds. I don't know where the remote is for the blinds. Hold on. Never mind. Sorry. I'm just gonna live with that. The dark bar across. I don't know why it's there because it's not in my preview screen. But anyway, not important. What is important are the patterns that may be keeping you stuck. And this is the human experience, right? This is how we show up and the kind of thing that we all have to deal with. And one of the ways that I've used this framework and one of the patterns that I'm so proud that I have managed to overcome is in worrying. And so if you are worrying a lot, like this is a great way to do it. And I'm so glad you are here. Thank you, Greg. Hello. And Trinity on Fire. Nice to have you here as well. And everyone else who's watching too, welcome. Because if you have patterns to interrupt, today's the day we're diving in. And I'm going to share some ideas that I hope will resonate with you. All right, so first, let's dive in to figuring out what pattern do you need to understand. It's interesting. This was actually inspired by a phone call I had earlier today that I really enjoyed the conversation. And one of the things I said to this person is, you know what, like you're so far ahead of the game because you actually recognize the pattern that you need to interrupt. And not just recognize it like, I'm always saying yes, but like specifically has gone granular to understand when I'm saying yes instead of saying no, or when I am, doing this thing. Like, because we need to understand and have the situational awareness of here are the patterns that I need to interrupt. But here's the situation. It's like taking it deeper. I want you to get so specific and so granular so we can say that when I'm in a board meeting, I end up taking on too much responsibility that isn't mine. And like very, very granular. Or when I have to, do this, I have to delegate. I'm not delegating enough, or I'm micromanaging it after I delegate, or just getting so specific. And for me, it was a lot of worrying about things that were out of my control that I used to do, right? Like, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if it goes like this? And it was never like, with the worry thing, I often joke, like we never worry about the good stuff. Like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen when I win the lottery? That's not what we worry about, right? We worry about, oh my God, what am I going to do if, this happens, or, like the bad stuff. So anyhow, you want to get as granular as you can. And I love to just take this to pen and paper, right? Here are the patterns, and this is when they show up, and this is what it is. And if you're recognizing what I'm walking you through here, it is very much the problem-solving framework, which is the basis for my new book. Look at this. And I think as of this afternoon, the glitch on Amazon is fixed. So these are available for order, especially on Amazon.com. Amazon.ca may still be a couple of days, but you can order from .com and get them right away. So anyway, super excited about that. But this is the problem-solving framework. So we start with situational awareness. Then we're going to go into self-awareness. And then we'll talk about solution activation. And the interesting thing about this is a lot of time, if we want to interrupt a pattern, we immediately go to solution. We say, okay, I'm saying yes when I want to say no. And then we go to, well, now I'm not going to say yes anymore. I'm going to immediately say no instead. And you try to come up with some strategy to say no. And the truth is, it won't stick. It will not stick. Because if we don't do the situational work up front and the self-awareness work up front, the solutions, they won't be the right solutions. Now sometimes you're going to win, like sometimes you're going to, yay, I got the right solution the first time around. But we can eliminate so much guesswork by going really deep into situational awareness and self-awareness. So situational awareness, get as granular as you can. What is the real issue? And then getting even granular about what are the circumstances in which that pattern shows up. Okay, when am I reenacting that pattern over and over and over again? Something to think. So now let's go into self-awareness. We need to recognize why you're doing the pattern. What is it serving for you? Is it keeping you small? Is it making you feel validated? Is it just jumping off and, it could be many different things. Obviously, the conversations are different with every client, with every person, to really understand how is it showing up for you? And so there are a couple of reasons we want to do this. Number one, we want to get a sense of how can we get our brain to recognize when we're doing the pattern in real time. Okay, because a lot of times we just go about patterns. There are default behaviors. And we go, and then like a day later we go, oh, shoot, I did it again. I was in the middle of it and I did it again. And I knew better, but I did it again because it was so automatic. Because we've had potentially decades of reinforcing these patterns in our lives. And so what I want to do is figure out how do you feel physically when you do the pattern? So if you're worrying, like I know that if I'm worrying, there's a certain sensation in my body that is happening, right? And we've got to get really clear about that mentally. What is the brain doing when you're, perseverating on something, or you're just like, you're going into that mode of that default pattern. And I'm being vague because I know every person has a different pattern. And in the book, I actually list 31 barriers to performance, is what I call them. And actually, let me tell you what a few of them are. Because you can do this for any of them. Worry, procrastination, glorifying busy, blame, judgment, gossip, constant complaining, perfectionism, inability to say no, ineffective time management, lack of focus, change resistance, drama, catastrophizing, closed-minded thinking, stubbornness, micromanaging, pessimism, past-focused, defensiveness, territory marking, constant lateness, comparison, resentment, lack of prioritization, frequent interruptions, poor planning, victim mentality, unclear boundaries, meeting-heavy schedule, or unrealistic expectations of yourself or others. Those are the 31 barriers to performance that complicate people's lives and are patterns that need to be interrupted. And so we just pick one at a time, but each of us could pick a different one. Okay? So we've got to do the self-awareness. Physically, how does it show up for you? Mentally, what's happening in your brain when you're doing one of those things? And then emotionally, how do you feel about it? Does it make you feel empowered or enlightened or excited or validated when you do that pattern? Is it a feeling of short-term gain for long-term pain, right? Procrastination. Is it that, there was something that happened when you were younger and you were, or you started your career in one way? And actually the example from the conversation today was, she had started her career in administration. And now she's a director level, like senior leader. Now, I'll never tell you her name. I often tell these stories, and I told her I was going to do this topic today based on our conversation. So you'll never get the information out of me, but this scenario, because we all go through these similar things, right? Like, this is part of the human experience, which is why I love, 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 love talking about this stuff. All right. So, but she could recognize in the self-awareness piece that because she started her role in the administration aspect, and because that was such a comfort level for her, that as she's grown into a more senior leadership role, that's still a default behavior. So she'll end up taking on some of the follow-up, like, that shouldn't be in her purview, right? Or I don't even know if she'd do this, but I've seen this with other people. And Mel Robbins talks about this. Like, put away the pen and paper if you're, especially if you're a female in a meeting. Like, you're not the note taker. So you can jot down a couple little things, but don't be taking notes like if you're a senior executive or you want to show up in a senior way, then we've got to interrupt those patterns. So this is part of the self-awareness, asking those questions, etc. Okay, Lauren is telling me that on Amazon.ca, your book is temporarily out of stock. Yes, this is what we've been trying to fix. So it will be, I think, up in a day or two to happen, and hopefully faster. So send a good little vibe out to the universe that they pick it up. But if you order on .com, they will ship it to Canada right now. So that's the other piece. And those of you who have ordered and it was like you were going to get a August delivery, I am sending you a copy in the meantime so you get it faster. So let me know if you did that. So I hope this makes sense where we're going, right? So situational awareness, self-awareness, understanding those patterns, and how it's serving you. Because if we don't understand that, then the last piece, which is solution activation, how do we actually interrupt these patterns, won't work. Okay. So now we do all that. With that in mind, we start brainstorming ideas on how you're going to overcome it. And that is an individualized process that I can do with clients, or you could do with a friend or a confidant, your mentor, somebody who can go, okay, I do this. So now I've got it, and this is why I think I do it and how it shows up for me. And now we're going to find ways, what are ways I could deal with it? But what I want to talk to you about are the principles of solution activation. And one of them, there are 5, but one of them that I think is so important to talk about is that a slip does not mean you need to stop. How often have we had a goal to change something, a habit that we've been working on, and instead of, just becoming perfect at this new thing that we're trying to accomplish, we fall into old habits. And then we fall into old habits and we go, oh, see, I can't do it. I'm never going to succeed at this. Well, that's not actually true. Just because you defaulted to your default pattern makes a lot of sense, by the way, just throwing that out there. That might be human nature. Does not mean we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so how could you recognize that slip is actually a learning lesson, not a reason to give up on the goal? See, when we slip, when we fail, it doesn't mean that we're never going to accomplish it. It means that we're still working on interrupting our default behavior. Which brings me to another one of the 5 solution activation principles, which is the second response is the priority. Get there faster. So if we can accept that we have a default behavior, so if I'm in this circumstance, I'm probably going to respond like this. And we accept that as just the way things are. Awesome. Now we go, but I don't want that to be the way things are. So instead, I'm going to try this new way. All these brainstormed ideas that I have. I'm going to pick one. So that when I recognize the self-awareness, that pattern brewing, I am going to shift. Let's say you're a worrier. So that's a favorite one because like life is just so free when you stop worrying. Like the best thing I ever did with my life, I swear it. One of them. If we say, I'm never going to worry again, and then you catch yourself worrying, you know what's going to happen? You're going to feel disappointed in yourself, potentially. But we don't need to, because we want to say, okay, so if I worry for 3 days before a big meeting, let's say, and the goal here is to move that 3 days of worrying down to 3 minutes or 30 seconds. And so if we allow the worry and we recognize it, we can interrupt the pattern faster. That's the key to making big lifelong changes and interrupting patterns. Is it not to get rid of it from it ever happening? I mean, I'm going to call BS on that. We can't, like, if we've spent 25 years of our lives in reinforcing the way we respond in a situation, and then we have this light bulb moment that says, I'm never going to do that again, and expect ourselves when we're in the moment not to do that again, we are setting ourselves up for failure. What I want you to do is go, okay, so I've been worrying for 3 days. So the first time, maybe you stop worrying at, you start to notice it, and then you do all these, brainstormed activities to interrupt the pattern. And now you only worry about it for 2 days before the meeting. And then the next meeting comes along and you only worry about it for 1 day. And then the next one comes along and you worry about it for an hour. And then the next one comes at 10 minutes. And then it's 3 minutes and it's 30 seconds. Like, that's how I think incrementally shortening the time of having a pattern be functional is the magic. Like, when we can do that, oh my gosh, life is so good. It's so good. All right. So there's my thinking on this. I would love questions. If you have any questions, I'm happy to coach through this. So the idea, get really granular. What are the circumstances that it's showing up so that you know that you can start keeping an eye out for it? And even to the point where when I used to have really struggled with my pain, for example, I knew going into a meeting, if my pain was high, I was at a higher risk for being irritable or being really antsy and on my phone all the time and always constantly deflecting. I knew that going in. And so when I started to practice this framework, I would get focused on the self-awareness going in. So I knew, okay, in meetings, I'm going to get distracted, not pay attention, whatever the case may be, right? So that was getting granular. So then before I walked into a meeting, I would do a quick check-in. What level is your pain at? How exhausted are you? What's going on in your world? Are you at risk in this meeting for being irritable or antsy or distracted or not present, not fully present? Anything that would take me away from being totally present. And by having that self-awareness, walking into the meeting, I could ground myself. And then as it was happening, maybe going to the phone or getting restless and moving around a lot and trying to get comfortable, I would be able to interrupt that pattern. And by the way, not perfect, obviously. I mean, I'm part of the human race, learning as we go. And, but that awareness and then knowing the second response is so much better or more important, that I could interrupt the pattern as it was happening. And, I talk about this in the book. If you are being unkind, maybe you're irritable and then you're being unkind, you can literally change that if you're self-aware in the middle of the sentence, in the middle of the conversation. You can go, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm not really liking how I'm responding to you right now. I'm being kind of a bit of a biatch right now. So let's change that and then shift the conversation. I know, I don't know if there's much more frustrating an experience than a call center that isn't, when you get somebody who's not really helpful or not really doesn't know their job or like, whatever, right? We've all been there. And I've had times where I've been like really irritated, like, come on, this is all we're trying to do. And I will interrupt the conversation and go, you know what, let's start over. I feel like, we're just kind of on this path of irritability. Let's begin again. And here's what I'm trying to accomplish. And if I understand what you're telling me is you can't accomplish it because of this, how do we get closer together? It's like that focusing on the second response, I think is just, it just makes it, because then you don't have judgment. No judgment that I screwed that up, because I am empowered to change as I go forward. And then as you get into it, eventually, like with what happened with me with worry, is it doesn't even hit the radar, right? Like actually, no, it probably hits the radar for about 10 seconds and I'm like, eh. And then I interrupt it and I don't worry about it anymore. And I have my ways of processing that. So there we go. Today's lockdown lift up. And like I said, we're going to keep it a lockdown lift up until all our freedoms are restored, mainly because I don't have another way to call 3:15 in the afternoon, Monday to Friday, or no, Monday to Thursday, Eastern Standard Time. So if you come up with another phrase that's, we could call it, awesome. In the meantime, lockdown lift up. And those of you who are no longer in any sort of a lockdown, we're going to live vicariously through you and celebrate your success. And while the rest of us stay at home or go to a very empty patio or a very empty store. All right. Anyway, hope you have the best day and keep shining your light out there, folks. It's whatever's going on in your life, I believe you've got this. You are going to get through it. And if there is a barrier to performance that is weighing you down, pick one. Pick one for the next 2 months that you are going to continually work through the problem-solving framework, and you're just going to absolve it. Like, I've had clients, like I had one client who was a total worrier, and we worked together, and one Christmas he called me after he'd had this experience of like spending the whole Christmas holidays worrying about the practice, a worry about tax, like all these different pieces of the puzzle. By the next Christmas, I was like, how'd it go? Like, how was your holidays? He goes, oh, it was awesome. I didn't think about work once. Like, no worrying. Like, it can be done. It can be done. Every barrier to performance. It just takes situational awareness, self-awareness, and then solution activation. And for the other principles, might I encourage you to get a copy of my latest book, Take Back Your Weekends, Stress Less, Do More, Be Happier. If you have an early edition of this, please let me know. I will replace it. But this is the one. This got it all in there, and I'm super, super excited for it. And I'm excited for you. So have the best day, and I will see you tomorrow on the Lockdown Lift Up.